Hello everyone. Today we have Rama Bijapurkar in our We Leadership interview series. Rama needs no introduction, but I would still do my job. She is an MBA from IIM Ahmedabad. She's done extensive work in marketing research and marketing consulting, and she's been a consultant on her own for more than 20 years now. She's advised organizations like Hindustan Unilever, McKinsey, and many more, Titan, Infosys. Uh, she's been teaching at IIM Ahmedabad for a long time. She's taught me marketing research and information system when I was at Ahmedabad. So she's been my professor, and I had a short stint at O.R.G. Mark where I learned a lot from her. Those days she was working on a levers project, and after that, she moved to McKinsey, and then on, she's been on her own. So that's so Rama, and she's the last word when it comes to marketing and branding in India, and probably amongst the top marketing consultants in the world. And today, she's kindly accepted our invitation to share her learning and insights and wisdom with our viewers. Welcome, Rama.
Thank you. That's such a kind and generous introduction. But then you are a student of mine, so uh, so I will take it as professorial privilege.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. No, your whatever I've learned from you has been very instrumental in whatever I've done. In a way, employee engagement is also marketing research, and
Uh,
uh, those lessons have been really handy. And that's the advantage of going to IIM Ahmedabad. How did IIM Ahmedabad help you in your journey?
I think what IIM Ahmedabad does is best summed up in what I believe are the words of Ravi Mathai, that we teach you how to learn so you can learn the rest of your life. So think about it. I am the pre-liberalization generation that came to work in the late 70s. But we still survived. My entire generation and the ones before me still survived liberalization, and we actually did quite well. I don't think I understood economics before that. I don't think I'm a physics graduate. I don't think I learned anything about sociology, anthropology, anything, nothing. But I think it enables you to figure things out. It enables you to analyze situations, and which is what we were trying to teach you in MRIs as well, that it's not about the tools and techniques so much as how you can analyze a problem and how you can try and find solution spaces. So I think that is the genius of what we all learned at IIM Ahmedabad. It felt like a boot camp. It felt really like, what's the point of asking why 15 times and going down that path? If you will remember Professor Jen, who's my co-teacher and who taught us both. But I think that is really what IMA does. It gives you the confidence that you will figure the solution out, which I continue to see in the student groups that I do. No matter how little they've studied, no matter whether they did their readings or not in the course, no matter how much time they spent on the project, at the end of the day, they will be able to put something together that is reasonably value adding.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. So amongst zillions of projects that you've done on marketing strategy and consumer behavior, which one really you love the most?
Oh gosh. I think every era is a different era, right? So I've kind of gone to work every single day. It sounds like a cliche. I mean, I may have hated what transpired in the day, but I loved the work I was doing. So the market research phase was lovely because the industry was young and nobody knew any better, least of all us. And so you were let loose on unsuspecting CEOs. I mean, there was no hierarchy, there was no level, there was nobody. It was just call IR, go and figure it out. So it was heady. It was heady. It was exciting. You learned so much. You were free to experiment with whatever techniques you wanted. If it blew up in your face, you were also expected to fix it. So it was like it was variety, it was exhilarating, and it was fun. And then over time I felt that no, I'm looking for this holy grail, which is the space which is both high in customer understanding and high in business understanding, which was not the market research business, which is why I moved to consulting. It was not the consulting business. And so eventually, Indra Parikh, who you will know, who's a professor at IIM Ahmedabad, she used to be the dean as well, much later. She said, if there's a space that only you know about, then you have to go and create your own. If it's a game only you know how to play, then go and create your own playground. So that whole process of throwing my body across the space, creating the playground, figuring out what it was, etc., was really exciting, and so on. And then, our boards were like a kid in a candy shop. It was exciting. So I think at various points in time, whatever is striking your fancy is really exciting at that time. Today, if you ask me to sit down and design a questionnaire, I may or may not have the patience to do it. I'm, however, a data junkie. I love data. But over time, I have less and less patience to say alpha people ate beta apples. I want to know what the big picture is. I think a little bit of work that I did, which is around my first book and the next one, which is the creation of a macro consumer understanding of India, which I felt was the first cousin to macroeconomics because it looks at the economy through the people view. I mean, that has also been wildly exciting when I see the work that the think tank that I'd set up then, that I'm no longer part of, but I'd set up with a partner who used to work in NCAR. So I mean, then I started working with economists, so that was also quite exciting. So yeah, I think every phase brings excitement if you run with it. There's no favorites, but the core of it all is the people view, consumer understanding for public policy, for and whatever employee engagement is. It's all about the people view, right?
Correct. Absolutely. So, you've done some massive projects for levers, right? Back in 90s.
Mm.
So would you like to share some learnings from that project?
Oh gosh. Actually, yeah, I went into Hindustan Lever after a certain stint in market research. Actually, into their market research department. It was a marriage of convenience where I said to them that I can't handle your straitjacket and you can't handle my irreverence. So we negotiated a very nice deal, and there were just some amazing people on that side from that generation. So we did a deal where for a year I would be with all the grade equivalences and all that, but I would be an insider outsider, which is how I learned to do I learned the art of the possible, as PV Narasimha says, to use his phrase. And so we actually struck up this marriage of convenience, which worked. And then along the way, that was the time when Nirma was just coming up, and so there are stories which any leverite will tell you, where Nirma was always bundled with the others in the sales and market share graph of competition until that line crossed the lever line and they said, hey, who are these others? And it turned out to be Nirma. So at that time, I had never heard of Michael Porter, I'm ashamed to say. And the finance director then of Lever, a man called Mr. Panikkar, had come back from Harvard, and he circulated a document which was a Porter and competitive strategy. And since I was an outsider, insider, outsider, nobody told me that when high ups circulate documents, you don't reply to them. That's also the advantage of not knowing the rules. And so I replied and said, I've seen a lot of small businesses that I've done market research for, and yeah, they're a completely different breed from you guys. So the next thing I knew, it was, did you actually write this? Did you actually say this? I mean, what on earth did you mean? And that's when it started. There was a project which was to look at the competitive strategy analysis for Nirma. So without getting the detail, which I've written about in my book, Customer in the Boardroom, I actually want to tell you that I had two people from A. Ferguson helping me. One is none other than Anita Ramachandran, who now is of Cerberus Consulting. And the other was her management trainee, whose name was Falguni Nayyar, who's now better known as the founder of Nykaa. And so that's when we actually understood this whole different world, and that was the beginnings of what they did. It was, I think they called it Project Sting or something, strategy to inhibit Nirma's growth, and that's how they actually came up with the whole low cost business model that happened. And so a lot of it was quite exciting, particularly because I had no understanding of this, and so you had to sort of learn to put together cash flows of the competitor, and how his model operated, how his distribution system was so different from the one that big companies used, and so on. So as I said, I have sort of gone into many more details on that. But it was quite extraordinary. It was learning how Nirma would. In those days, Gujarat had drought, so trucks would come in full and go out empty, and that's how, standing at the Naka, he managed to figure out a really low cost way to send out his goods all over the country, which is heresy if you come from a larger company which wants fixed rates and insured for the rest of the year and so on. So lots of interesting stuff that I learned at that point in time. And to go back to your earlier question of how did IIMA help you, I think it's just the brashness of knowing that you can do it. and and actually figuring out how to do it without knowing any of this stuff. And then I decided to move on. And then I went back 3 or 4 years later, part-time, into what was called Project Millennium with the chairman at that time. And so I did I did all my best pieces of work there. So one of them was around building a competitive edge for a brand of employer, which I had written about earlier and also published in the Journal of the Market Research Society of the UK. And then I went back to look at it a little more, because at that time they were not doing well on the IIM campuses. So to start looking at it and see what they can do. So that was exciting. And then I had another stint in between where I was part of a team. I was the outsider looking at the low cost food business, Annapurna, which never really worked at that point in time. But all the same, it was, Levers is just a phenomenal organization with just phenomenal people, and everybody is like so smart and so energized and turned on that it was like a kid in a candy store.
Thank you. Thank you very much for these insights. These are fantastic insights. And uh, could you also tell us what is the sum and substance of your latest book, The Lilliput Land?
Yes. So I write, one stream of my work and my writing is to write about what I call the consumer economy, which is that 50 to 60% of our GDP, which is consumption, which everybody seems to have a point of view on, and very few people have facts on. So the first one was called We're Like That Only, understanding the logic of consumer India. In fact, as C.K. Prahlad, who wrote the foreword to that, said in the last line of his foreword, he said, listen to India from within, listen to the logic from within. So that book was really, I think, the first of that genre, which was, I think it was just written because I was fed up of the way multinationals were looking at us. And then I wrote another one which kind of sank without a trace, but it was called A Never Before World, Tracking the Evolution of Consumer India. It came out just before the 2014 election and sank without a trace. As I keep telling my friend Sanjay Baru, it was his book, The Accidental Prime Minister, that shoved all of us boring people off the shelves. And then I've been looking a little more at this whole consumer economy. And the reason it's called Lilliput Land, the power of small, how small is driving India's mega consumption story. And I call it Lilliput Land because it was it's taken inspired by the classic Gulliver's Travels, the 18th century classic, where a land of very small people, the Lilliputians, the Lilliputs, actually managed to defeat this big giant Gulliver. And as you know, the BRIC report right at that time and continuously has been saying that the economies of the world in the future, the richest economies, the largest economies will not be the richest economies. So we are a country, we are a large economy, number 5 trending to number 3, but made up of lots and lots and lots of modest income people. We're below 100 in terms of rank of per capita income. And yet, so we're modestly educated. Our occupations are really something we should be worrying about, because, as you know, most of the country is self-employed, and is in a sense a gig worker, an own account worker, as Yalos call them. Very little formal employment, but yet it's lots of people consuming, earning, spending, and consuming a little bit each. That adds up to a lot. So that is really the idea of Lilliput. These people are also served by a lot of small companies, because the small businesses in India are actually so much more exciting. Walk down the street and look at the food businesses, for example. The small businesses, or if you look at the whole startup brigade now, the small businesses are nimble, they're customer centered, they give large companies a run for their money, and they're all yoked together with very, very small, millions, trillions of digital transactions, which are really very small. So that was the idea of Lilliput Land. So I've looked at the consumption story in terms of structure, which is disappointing demographics, but people must know, let's not pretend to be what we aren't, let's embrace our demographics. And then there's behavior, which everybody loves, how we love to consume, how everybody's aspiring, etc., etc. And how we're so digitally happy. Everything from our temples onwards has gone digital. And then the last section is on supply, where I make the case that the supply side is lagging the consumption side. The consumer is way ahead of the supplier. We're an underserved market. Big businesses don't want to serve small customers, except that now we have found the keys to manage price, performance, and profit, because our consumers want high performance. They're monsters. They want high performance. They want it at a low price, and the companies want a profit. So how do you get this price, performance, profit conundrum actually solved? And the solution is now coming from digital business models, which are aggregating small suppliers, they're aggregating small buyers, they're yoking them together nicely digitally, and they're crashing costs with digital processes. Think about how much it costs for you to do anything, or a KYC. If you're a financial institution, think about what it costs now. And so I've looked at all the new age businesses and shown how they actually are the future of India. Looked at marketplaces where the small on both sides come together and are aggregated. And I'm saying that is the future, which will deliver, crack open the mass market and deliver price, performance, and profit. That's the thesis of my book.
That's fantastic. That's really worth reading for everyone, including me, and I'll certainly read it up, and I'm sure a lot of listeners will also read it up. Since you've been researching, advising, consulting, marketing, branding, and studying the change in consumer behavior over the last several decades, how has the consumer behavior changed in India?
Hmm. I think one clearly big thing that we see is, of course, the adoption of digital for many reasons. One is, often people ask me, how do you know that the consumer is ready for digital? And I say that when our temples went digital, I mean, does it matter? You needed an OTP during COVID to go into the temple. You can live stream anything you like. You can get darshan online. So, I mean, I think we're completely ready. But digital is also status blind service. It doesn't matter whether you speak English or you speak Hindi. The IVR doesn't care. The computer doesn't care. The web portal doesn't care. And as you now know, you don't even need to be literate. So, I mean, it amazes me that this country, which is not all that well educated, very modestly well educated, many hardly finished school, but everybody of every age has learned to use a smartphone. I mean, isn't that extraordinary?
It
Uh,
is. It
it
is.
is, isn't it? And even now, when I think of how I communicate, and then you look at something like a Google intake where you can type and transliterate into the local language script. So if I speak Tamil but I don't read and write it, I can still communicate with the staff in my home in the Nilgiris. I mean, I think that's also just extraordinary. So I mean, there's a whole digital piece, whichever way you look at it, and just look at the digital payment infrastructure also. The look at the streaming that we're doing, and then supply has also caught up with it. A lot of stuff is in local languages, vernacular for the small people. So that's one thing that is really exciting. The second thing about consumer behavior that's changed is what I call the monster consumer. So if you think about the 90s into the first part of the 2000s, as taxes went away and competition came in and the free market happened, the prices of everything came down and the quality of everything went up. Right? Remember the cost of the
Right.
air conditioner, remember the cost
Absolutely.
of the cell phone, remember the cost of an
Mm.
air ticket, remember the cost of clothes. I mean, and today I look at my maids and they have 10 saris which are nylon made in China or India or wherever, maybe China, and they're anything from 100 to 1,000, and or anything. I mean, you look at, so that happened. After which came Chinese goods, which showed us all kinds of goods we'd never seen before at all kinds of prices we'd never seen before. So that was the second one that made us bigger monsters. Then came Amazon. If you remember, before that, unless you were really buddy bonded with the retailer, you couldn't return anything. Now you can return anything you like, anytime you like, and you don't even have to pay for the returns, right? The guy will come and pick it up. And Amazon also, because it's a marketplace, has given us an incredible variety at very low cost. They're very low prices. So, and then at the same time, everywhere else in the world, high tech came in when high touch had gone out. But in India, high touch and high tech have coexisted. So our monster consumers are saying, "Ki bhai, recognize me on my registered mobile number, recognize me when I come online, when I walk into your shop or branch, recognize me." So it's all and jo abhi sab log omni channel bolte hain na. So the language of India has never been this or that. It's always this and that. And I think it's become even more heterogeneous. We always thought after liberalization can be nice and homogeneous, single India, global banenge. But actually, and also with the internet and also with everything else, we become so fractured and fragmented and hyper local. And look at our politics, look at the language. I mean, even technology is supporting local languages. So we've become, and then there are small hyperlocal brands, there are big national brands, there are D2C brands, there are D2 everything brands, right? So I think we just become that much more fragmented. I think these are, to me, the big things. And of course, aspiration that everyone talks about. I have an anthropologist friend who's very well known called Arjuna Padurai. And one day he said to me many years ago that, you don't aspire sitting in a dark room. You need information resources to aspire. And the more you get the informational resources, the more you can write the story of the life you want to have and the role of products and services that will play in that. So I think that's to me the most exciting changes. And there are some others as well, which I do write about in my book.
No, that's really fantastic. Another question comes to my mind. I was interviewing Dilip Soman, and in his book in, I think, 2016 or 18, he had written that there's a huge uh, difference in the consumer behavior by generations. And
Hmm.
then 1.5 years ago, he wrote another book where he's saying that there's no difference by generations. It's the difference is driven by the digitalization and the absorption of digitalization. So those Gen X who absorb digital, uh, they behave very similar to the Gen Z, and those Gen Z who've not absorbed, they behave very similar to Gen X. So it's more about absorption of the digital world than the generation. But in the Indian context, what does your research say? Are there generational differences or are there only digital differences?
Um, No, I mean, I think it's a bit of a truism. I think if you are digitally savvy, you obviously have more exposure. You have more exposure. You have more ways of thinking about things. I mean, so it's like saying if you're alone in a dark room, you will be one kind of person, and if you are out there in a crowded city, you will be another kind of person. So I mean, I think there's a little bit of that. But the problem I have with a lot of Indian intellectuals who talk about in India who talk about Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, millennials, and I have written about this to say that these are not just labels based on X number of years. The idea of an age cohort, and you will see this the way the Americans do it very well, the idea of an age cohort is a group of people who've been through similar nation memories. They've been through similar times. They've been through similar environments, right? It's not just because you were born at that time. So therefore, they had the boomers. Now people talk about baby boomers, but you have to have been in that time, or people who had the Vietnam War, people who had the Afghan War, or if you look at this point in time, where people who've been through the hollowing out of the middle class, those, or young people today in America who, from everything I read, who are wondering about the value of college, saddled with a lot of loans, and so on, or the entire uh, reskilling they've had to do community colleges. So for us, I think the 1984, 85, 91 was definitely the creation of the liberalization generation. I think in 2000 we had the Y2K generation of people who suddenly understood how cool India could be to the world. But again, if you look at a lot of our young people, it mirrors our population, right? You're rural, you're poor, you want a government job. I mean, that's what you want. I mean, many of them have parents who haven't done very well. They need to establish themselves. They want predictability of income. That's who they are. So yeah, there is a difference. Of course, there is a difference, but if you are not earning as much, I mean, for example, I written about 10 years ago that maybe the angry young man is back, right? Today, you have created a generation that has a lot of hope and aspiration, has as actually I've just done a study on youth through a anthropologist in IIT Madras called Matangi Krishnamurthy. We've written a little bit about it, and the sum and substance is tremendous agency, bad structure. So what happens when tremendous individual agency collides with a really, really bad structure, as in no formal jobs, you have to figure out what you have to do. So some people survive, some people don't, some people learn new things, some people don't. So I think that's the context in which we have to look at our young people. So no, in India, it's not as simple as digitalization. I think it is to do with where you are positioned in the hierarchy and what kind of so you've seen a lot of social progress, a lot of optimism. You're seeing a lot of infrastructural shifts, but you have not yet seen your own personal situation has got better, and it has not. So I think that's really where we are. I
That's
mean, even in your own context, look at it. I mean, yesterday I attended a talk at a retail convention that I was, and someone said, so we're using AI generated resumes, and then we had phone in walk-in interviews, and by the time he finished describing the process, I thought, no wonder you have 130% attrition, because I tell you three things: you create my resume, you ask me two questions based on a standard templated bio data, you're never going to be able to pick out people who are more likely to stay. So lots of work to be done on that front.
Yeah, I agree. How do you see the consumer behavior changing in the next 20 years?
Like if you say what we used to say in Ahmedabad, that there is a concept and there is a context, I don't think the concept of behavior changes. I think all consumers are always value maximizing, value seeking creatures. Value equal to benefit minus cost. वो value processing algorithm कैसे change होता है depends on what is available and what supply side is available, as well as what is going on in the country and the environment around you. I think clearly, in fact, my friend Santosh Desai used to say it very well, that life is not a condition to be endured, but a product to be experienced. So I think we will see more and more and more behavior along those things. And I think that right now, a lot of people are looking for the basic quality of life improvers, productivity tools. So hopefully, as public infrastructure gets better and better, the productivity tools are more and more available, and you have more loans available for you to buy these productivity tools. I think at that point we might start spending a lot more on entertainment, a lot more on affordable indulgences, and so on and so forth.
That's really a fantastic projection of future. How's artificial intelligence going to impact human behavior more than consumer behavior?
I don't know. You have to ask them. I love a WhatsApp that is floating around that says, "I want AI to do my dishes and my cooking so that I can write poetry and paint." But if AI is writing poetry and painting, well, I'm still doing the dishes and the cooking. It's not so great. I loved that because I said, "Chat GPT is writing poetry. I mean, ठीक है, तब और मेरे को जाके बर्तन करना पड़ेगा." I mean, that's not sounding so great, is it? So but this Jasprit Bindra, who has written many books around this whole AI thing, he says AI won't take your job, but somebody with AI will. So we still don't know. I'm also following a lot of the debates on where it goes, but which parts? I mean, I tried using ChatGPT to look at my course outlines and so on and so forth. So I'm happy to say that there is still a little bit of value add that I can do. But if you notice, if you read the latest IS topper, he said that he worked smart. He used ChatGPT to analyze the questions and the sequencing of the questions and the pattern of questions, and that's how he actually topped the IIS. That's what he said in a newspaper. I'm also wondering how will we, so unless you have, so will it be AI versus AI? AI will set the question paper, AI will decide the patterns of the question paper. My students will use AI to write their term papers. I will use AI to figure out whether their term papers have been written by AI. I mean, honestly, I don't know. I'm glad I'm not young anymore. I don't care. But I think it's a great tool. But like I said, if it did my cooking, it would be nicer. I think there's positive labor and negative labor in this world, and I'm hoping that all the negative labor will get taken away. So one view is that there's going to be this whole renaissance, right? The flowering of creativity. So let's hope.
Great, great. What would be your advice to the young professionals and young leaders uh, currently in the corporate sector, policy advocacy, and the non-government sector?
I'm now old enough to know that you don't give advice to young people. They don't take it. Well, but I think there's something around, I'm noticing that a lot of people have learned to talk the talk. But I don't know if they have learned to walk the walk, meaning the talk is available everywhere. Maybe it is the internet era, maybe it is this yesterday or day before yesterday, I was listening to something and everybody had the right buzzwords. And I noticed my students after 2 years of online, thanks to COVID, when we actually had a physical class where you could kind of pin everybody down and say why, or why are you thinking this, or what do you mean, or what happens. I noticed that they were able to use all the words in the right kind of sequence. And I see it a lot at meetings as well. And I would say that there is still room for fundamental concepts, because if you understand a concept, you don't have to have a domain. The concept is your domain, right? If there's something you know how to do. And eventually, when we start looking at who to hire for CEOs every time we're on boards and so on, we're not looking at, so we're looking at one whole basket of what I would call technical skills, everything to do with running the business. And then we're looking at that delta. We're looking at that delta, which is sagacity, wisdom, maturity. More than that, intellectual power to determine direction, sensing, intellectual sensing power to be able to see which way the wind is blowing, the courage to make the hard moves. Those are all the things that we're actually looking at. So I think it's time to start paying attention. I sound 100 years old saying this, but I think it's time to start paying attention to building depth, because that's what is going to be the big differentiator. Because width everybody has, talk everybody has, so you have to make the effort to build the depth to figure out what you stand for, who you are, what you're good at doing, how you're going to synthesize everything around you to determine direction and make it happen in your own way. So build yourself is the depth that you need.
Yeah, that's absolutely great. Thank you very much, Rama. Thanks a lot
Thank
for your
you.
time, sharing the wisdom and the experiences. I'm sure I enjoyed the conversation. I'm sure the viewers will enjoy the conversation. And uh, viewers, please go through the interview and go through these books, and you're going to benefit a lot. And with that, we close
Thank you.
today's interview and to be there for the next one.
Thank you, and good luck
Thank
for all the
you.
work that you're doing. Sounds really exciting. Okay, bye.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Bye.